From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day, I am Win Peñano bringing you today's edition of Dateline Malacañang. For our top story, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. described his ongoing state visit to India as one of his most productive and constructive yet, despite only being one of the second day of his 5-day trip aimed at strengthening ties with one of Asia's rising powers. Speaking during a meeting with Indian President Draupadi Murmu at Rashtrapati Bhavan on Tuesday, President Marcos praised the warm reception extended to him and the Philippine delegation. He highlighted the strong and growing friendship between the two nations.
Thank you for this very gracious and elegant welcome that you have prepared for me and for my delegation. Like my father before me, I will always cherish this state visit as living proof of our shared desire to draw closer to each other. I am much inspired by our meetings that we held today. I look forward to bringing home the gains from our engagements and carry forward the plans and initiatives that both sides have agreed to and to pursue through the plan of action. May the roots of friendship continue to deepen. Mabuhay and maraming salamat. I have to say that we did not expect to cover much ground because we had very little time that we have had here. But I am happy to be able to report that that was certainly not the case. And has been one of my most productive and constructive visits that I have ever had. And I attribute this to the enduring closeness between the Philippines and India. And in the time that we have had here, short as it was, we have discovered a multitude of possibilities and areas of potential. And we are going to work very, very hard together with our counterparts in the Indian government and leadership to make all of these come to fruition to the benefit for all our peoples, both Indian and Filipino.
President Marcos said he is much inspired by the outcomes of their high-level talks, adding that he is eager to push forward with the plans and initiatives both sides have agreed to. He credited the early success of the engagements to the enduring closeness of the Philippines and India, saying that even in a short time, both countries have found a multitude of possibilities and areas of potential. The visit coincides with the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the Philippines and India. Earlier Tuesday, President Marcos met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at Hyderabad House. The two leaders formally launched the Philippines-India Strategic Partnership and witnessed the signing of over a dozen bilateral agreements covering defense, maritime cooperation, cybersecurity, space, digital technology, and tourism. On Thursday, the president will head to Bangalore, India's tech and innovation hub, to meet with Indian business leaders and explore future collaboration in digital infrastructure, startups, and advanced manufacturing.
Dateline Malacañang.
In our news, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is pushing for a preferential trade agreement or PTA with India, describing it as a key move to expand market access and build supply chain resilience between the two nations. On the third day of his state visit to India, President Marcos presented the proposal during a CEO roundtable discussion with Indian business leaders organized by the Philippine Department of Trade and Industry and India's Ministry of Commerce and Industry. The president said the PTA would institutionalize trade facilitation measures and strengthen economic integration, especially in sectors where both countries share complementary interests. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro spoke to the Philippine media team during the trip.
Binigyan din ni Pangulong Marcos Jr. ang pagsasapormal ng Philippine-India Preferential Trade Agreement o PTA na magbubukas ng mas malawak na market access, pag-institutionalize ng trade facilitation at pag-reinforce ng supply chain resilience. Hinikayat din ng Pangulo ang business-to-business collaboration sa ICT sectors, digital technology, semiconductors, renewable energy, infrastructure, healthcare, at pharmaceuticals. Ang mga sektor na ito ay align sa development priorities at global opportunities ng Pilipinas.
President Marcos invited Indian companies to explore investment opportunities in semiconductors, digital technology, infrastructure, renewable energy, pharmaceuticals, and healthcare. He said the Philippines is open for business and ready to collaborate. He also highlighted recent reforms meant to attract strategic investments and make it easier to do business, such as Executive Order 18, creating green lanes for priority projects, the Public-Private Partnership Code, amendments to the Renewable Energy Act allowing full foreign ownership, and the Create More Act signed in November 2024, which simplifies VAT and tariff incentives while reducing the cost of doing business.
Binigyan din naman ni Pangulong Marcos Jr. ang iba't ibang legislative measures upang mas mapaluwag at mapadali ang pagbubukas ng negosyo sa Pilipinas ng foreign investors, kabilang na ang Indian business groups. Kabilang sa mga efforts na ito ay ang pag-issue ng Executive Order No. 18 na nag-uutos na sa pagkakaroon ng green lanes for strategic investments upang masiguro ang mabilis at streamlined processing ng investments sa Pilipinas. Pinasa rin ng Marcos administration ang Public-Private Partnership or PPP Code of the Philippines na siyang nag-consolidate at nag-modernize ng PPP framework sa bansa. Ang amendments sa Renewable Energy Act na naglalayong hikayatin ang mas maraming investors na mamuhunan sa clean energy sa bansa. Binigyan lakas din ni Pangulong Marcos Jr. ang investment regime sa pamamagitan ng corporate recovery and tax incentives for enterprises to maximize opportunities for reinvigorating the economy or Create More Act. Pinirmahan ito ng Pangulo noong November 2024. Layunin ng Create Act or Create More Act ang liwanagin at i-expand ang value-added tax or VAT at duty incentive availment. Padaliin at pababain ang cost of doing business, i-enhance ang global tax incentive competitiveness, at magbigay ng mas malinaw na rules for transitioning registered business enterprises. Sa ilalim nito, mas pinadali at mas pinagaan sa mga investors ang kanilang pamumuhunan para sa paglago ng kanilang negosyo sa Pilipinas. Bagay na makakatulong at makaka-generate ng mas maraming trabaho para sa mga Pilipino. Ayon kay Pangulong Marcos Jr., layunin ng mga measures na ito na time-bound, performance-based, and transparent ang Pilipinas sa gitna ng pabago-bagong pangangailangan ng mga investors.
The president also underscored the need for human capital development, citing the recent passage of the Enterprise-Based Education and Training Framework Act, or EBET, which aims to improve the competitiveness of Filipino workers across various sectors. He reported that bilateral trade between the Philippines and India reached $3.3 billion from 2024 to 2025, showing growing alignment between the two economies. The country's 5.7% GDP growth in 2024, stable credit ratings, and a strong banking sector, he said, are proof of the Philippines' sound economic fundamentals. To maintain this momentum, President Marcos has directed the Department of Trade and Industry to lead PTA discussions and establish a joint working group on trade and investment with India.
Binigyang pansin ni Pangulong Marcos Jr. ang pagpapahalaga sa human capital ng bansa, dahilan upang ipasa ang Enterprise-Based Education and Training or EBET framework. Dahil dito, mas maiaangat ng bawat manggagawang Pilipino ang kanilang kagalingan upang mas maging handa sila sa anumang larangan o industriya. Sa kasalukuyan, binigyan diin ni Pangulong Marcos Jr. ang growing momentum sa bilateral trade Pilipinas na umabot sa $3.3 billion mula 2024 hanggang 2025. Isang patunay hindi lang sa magandang dynamism na ekonomiya ng bansa, pati na rin sa mas malakas na complementarities at value-sustained dialogue sa pagitan ng pamahalaan at business sectors ng Pilipinas at India. Ipinahayag din ni Pangulong Marcos Jr. ang sustained economic growth ng bansa na umabot sa 5.7% GDP growth noong 2024, patuloy na mas healthy at robust ang banking sectors habang patuloy na nakakatanggap ng stable at positive investment grades ang ating credit rating ng bansa. Hinikayat ng Pangulo ang Department of Trade and Industry na makipag-ugnayan sa kanilang Indian counterparts na mag-convene ng Joint Working Group on Trade and Investment. Inutos din ng Pangulo sa DTI na pangunahan ang efforts ng pamahalaan sa PTA. Nagpapasalamat din si Pangulong Marcos Jr. sa mga CEOs para sa kanilang commitment sa Pilipinas. Makakaasa naman ang Indian business groups sa commitment ng pamahalaan para sa mas maunlad na pagnenegosyo sa bansa.
President Marcos concluded by assuring Indian investors that his administration remains committed to providing a predictable and supportive business climate.
Dateline Malacañang.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has ordered a 60-day suspension of rice importation starting September 1, 2025, in a move aimed at protecting Filipino farmers during the peak harvest season. The announcement was made by Presidential Communications Office Secretary Dave Gomez on Wednesday, following a meeting between the President and his cabinet on the sidelines of his state visit to India. According to Gomez, the temporary halt seeks to stabilize local palay prices and prevent Filipino farmers from being undercut by the arrival of cheaper imported rice. When asked about possible tariff adjustments, the president said it is not yet time to consider increasing duties on imported rice. Meanwhile, Senator Francis Pangilinan welcomed the suspension, calling it a win for local farmers. He said immediate support must follow, noting that many farmers are still forced to sell their palay for just 5 to 9 pesos per kilo. The senator urged the full implementation of the Sagip-Saka law and proposed using food program funds in the 2025 national budget to buy rice directly from local producers. Earlier, the Department of Agriculture had already recommended the temporary import ban and the imposition of tariffs on imported rice to protect local agriculture. Again, the 60-day suspension of rice imports takes effect on September 1.
Dateline Malacañang.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has confirmed that the Philippines is in the process of acquiring more BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles from India as part of the military's ongoing modernization and efforts to strengthen the country's regional defense posture. Speaking in a televised interview with India's First Post aired Wednesday, the president said the armed forces of the Philippines is satisfied with the system and sees the need for additional units. The remarks came on day 3 of his 5-day state visit to India, where defense and economic ties have been major topics. The Philippines received its first batch of BrahMos missiles in April 2024 under a $375 million deal signed in 2022. The package included 3 missile batteries, training, and logistics support. President Marcos emphasized that while the Philippines is not preparing for war, the upgrade are necessary responses to growing regional challenges. The president also pointed to the importance of interoperability with defense partners like India, especially as joint maritime exercises in the region continue to increase. He revealed that during his departure from Manila, 4 Indian naval vessels were already operating in the South China Sea, with 1 docked in the Philippines and the others training with the Philippine Navy. President Marcos also lauded India's rapidly expanding defense industry, describing its technology as second to none. He confirmed that additional military acquisitions from India beyond BrahMos are under consideration. His statements come amid renewed maritime tensions in the West Philippine Sea, where China's vessels have continued to harass and block Filipino ships, particularly near Ayungin Shoal.
Dateline Malacañang.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. says the government may begin phasing out subsidies for its Benting Bigas Meron Na or BBM Na program as local rice production continues to improve thanks to ongoing agricultural reforms. The program, a key initiative under the Marcos administration, offers 20 pesos per kilo rice to low-income and vulnerable sectors. Speaking to media, President Marcos explained that the subsidy is now sustainable, and although government spending on it is expected to decrease in the coming years, the program's reach will expand to help more Filipinos in need. He credited this progress to reforms made over the past 3 years, which include lower prices of farming inputs, wider distribution of agricultural machinery, and a stronger crackdown on smuggling and hoarding of rice. The president added that land reform efforts, including the speedier issuance of land titles, have helped empower farmers and boost rice yields.
Hindi pa nagawa nung bago kaming upo, wala pa lahat yan. So, sa nakaraang 3 taon, ginagawa na ngayon namin. Ngayon, may kakayahan na tayo. Habang yung production natin gumaganda, bababa ng bababa yan. Okay. But we got to, naabot na natin yung punto na masabi natin, kaya na natin ito. We can afford it. We can afford the subsidy. And as the subsidy becomes less and less, mas magiging malaki ang coverage ng 20 pesos.
Food security and affordable rice remain top priorities for the Marcos administration, especially as many Filipinos continue to face economic challenges.
Dateline Malacañang.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. says the national budget will be enough to fund key government programs, but only if corruption is eliminated and public funds are properly managed. The president made the statement as he cited cases where budgeted infrastructure projects were shortchanged, with only half of the planned work completed, while corrupt officials allegedly pocketed the rest of the funds.
Oo, meron. Basta't yung pera ng Pilipinas ay ginagamit sa tamang paraan. Yung perang nakalaan para sa classroom, ginamit talaga sa classroom. Hindi nakalagay doon 2 classroom, ginawa lang 1 classroom. Binulsa na yung natira. Yung mga ganong klase. Pag talagang mahigpit tayo at tama ang gamit ng ating pondo, meron tayo.
In his recent State of the Nation address, President Marcos highlighted corruption in flood control projects where financial mismanagement has led to repeated flooding in various communities. In response, the president has ordered a comprehensive audit of flood prevention projects completed in the last 3 years and has directed authorities to take legal action against those involved in the misuse of funds or profiteering. President Marcos stressed that reducing corruption is essential to making sure the national budget directly benefits the Filipino people and supports long overdue reforms. Addressing concerns over the Philippines' 17.27 trillion peso debt as of June, the president compared government borrowing to investments made by corporations, saying the debt must be seen as a means to fund national development. He added that the country's workforce is its most valuable asset and reiterated his commitment to education, skills training, and job creation to raise labor competitiveness.
Tapos yung utang na yun, ginagamit pang investment para palakihin ang negosyo, para pagandahin yung whatever, restaurant or sari-sari, whatever it is. Huwag natin tinitignan yun lang trillion.
As an absolute
Sir,
number.
it's not an absolute number. Like any corporation, may balance sheet yan. The balance sheet has assets and liabilities. Pag tinitignan lamang yung utang, tinitignan lang yung liabilities. Tignan nyo yung asset. Nadadagdagan yung asset natin. Nadadagdagan yung training natin na ibibigay sa ako, pinakamalaking asset natin, Pilipino, yung manggagawang Pilipino. So yung utang na yun, gagamitin mo naman para pang-training doon sa tao yun. Anong balik nun? Ang balik nun in employment.
Yes.
At saka employment sa magandang trabaho, hindi yung mga basta-basta na trabaho.
According to the president, empowering workers while fighting corruption will ensure that public money goes where it's truly needed.
Dateline Malacañang.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. says the Social Security System, or SSS, is financially strong and can support a pension increase without raising contribution rates from its members. Speaking on the latest episode of the BBM podcast, which aired Wednesday, President Marcos explained that the rising number of working Filipinos will offset any short-term effects on the SSS fund. The SSS has already announced a hike in monthly pension payouts for eligible members, saying the adjustment will have minimal impact on the long-term stability of the fund. The president dismissed concerns over the SSS future viability, saying government projections show the SSS fund is growing rapidly and could even match or exceed the strength of the Government Service Insurance System, or GSIS.
It's fine because the SSS is growing anyway. Our population is growing. Our working population is growing. So yun ang bawi dun. It will continue to grow. In fact, in our estimation, SSS, in terms of its fund, is growing at such a rate that it will be bigger than GSIS soon.
President Marcos's remarks aim to reassure SSS members and retirees that the agency remains in a strong position, able to deliver benefits without requiring higher monthly contributions.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang says President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. may already have names included in Senator Panfilo Lacson's corruption list, which alleged that some lawmakers were involved in irregular infrastructure projects. The palace made a statement after Senator Lacson revealed that at least 67 members of parliament in 2022 were either directly or indirectly acting as contractors, giving them control over both government funds and project delivery. This follows President Marcos's strong condemnation of corruption in his fourth State of the Nation address on July 28, where he vowed to hold accountable those responsible for financial mismanagement in public works. Presidential Communications Undersecretary Claire Castro said the palace welcomes Lacson's expose and encourages others with similar knowledge to come forward. She added that while such revelations are important, they must also be supported by evidence and handled responsibly. President Marcos has earlier ordered an audit of flood control and infrastructure projects completed in the last 3 years as part of his broader campaign against corruption.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, or OWA, has extended its condolences and assistance to the family of an overseas Filipino worker, or OFW, who tragically died on her way home to Dumaguete City earlier this week. The OFW, identified as Wilma Auza, had just returned from Kuwait after completing her employment contract. She was traveling aboard a passenger bus when she reportedly suffered a cardiac arrest. According to fellow passengers, Auza began vomiting and appeared unwell during the trip. She later seemed to recover and fell asleep, but upon arriving at the terminal, passengers were unable to wake her and discovered that she had already passed away. Emergency responders rushed to the scene and brought her remains to a rural health unit for medical examination. Authorities say an investigation is ongoing into the events leading to her death. OWA Administrator Patricia Yvonne Kaunan confirmed that the agency is in close contact with Auza's family and is ready to extend support and assistance. The agency also reaffirmed its commitment to the welfare of OFWs and their families.
Dateline Malacañang.
And that concludes today's edition of Dateline Malacañang. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, I am Win Peñano. Good day.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.